More on corporations. Now we got these things, these huge behemoth of structural entities called the corporation, and they're international in scope. They've, as much as possible, they've stepped outside the rule of nation states. They have a culture. They have a structure. They have a form. They have this hierarchical form that works from the top down to some extent. They have certain purposes that have become part of their culture. They exist to make money. They exist to perpetuate themselves. They exist to influence the world in order that they can do these things. And there are some people that are into the conspiracy things that think that the various leaders of these institutions get together and maybe they sit around, you know, the Bilderbergers and the rest of that. And in some of my writing, you'll find me talking about things so weird as occult brotherhoods and the rest of that, and I can do that, but I think for our purposes right now, in terms of the Second American Revolution and thinking about changing the Constitution and developing a new Constitution, we just need to sort of understand some basic things about corporations as a social form that has become more and more independent of human beings. Now, where does the qualities that cause this to happen come from? Well, they come from human beings. So we could say, I'll just read you a list I made a little bit ago. Human beings invest their social forms with structure. Because there are human beings in it, the structure has a kind of thing that we could call an appetite. It also concerns itself with control. If you can't control things, you can't cause the effects that you want to cause. There's this urge for emancipation, independence, and continuance that's in the corporation. Now, these are all things that exist in human beings. So you could say that one of the things that's happened in a corporation with its tendency to a kind of operations which have these qualities which we would call psychopathological, that is, there's no conscience and there's no empathy. And a lot of the things that corporations seem to lack conscience and empathy. What we have then in the corporation is a thing that bears only parts of the qualities of the human beings that have occupied it over a long period of time. And it's a social form that has managed to establish itself as the bearer of these qualities that human beings have, but they're dark qualities. They're not light qualities, we could put it that way. Now, this is not to say that it's all dark. I mean, after all, a corporation that, let's look at food, for example. People know that there's a lot going on in food, and people are very upset about what's going on in food, because these large agricultural corporations, which of course we talked a little bit about when we talked about China and the future in agriculture and stuff. But anyway, these corporations have these qualities, and we're right to a certain extent to talk about the corporation as a thing that has a certain kind of life. Now, well, it's not totally one-sided. It does have a tendency to lean toward the dark because it's become somewhat independent. Now, if of human control, or in the sense that the corporate culture, which you might call the soul of the corporation has only absorbed a certain amount of the qualities of human beings, certain typical kinds of qualities of human beings, that allows it to compete, shall we say. And there's a kind of, I hate to use the word Darwinism, because I don't think that's accurate. I think there's more involved in that. But there is a kind of social Darwinism of corporations. And in fact, when you listen to free market capitalists talk, some of them will assert that corporations need to be allowed to die, and that during the banking crisis, a whole lot of these companies should have been allowed to collapse, regardless of the effect on the world economy, because if there's no sort of living and dying in these businesses, then one of the other constraints comes off, and this is a worry for a number of people, because now these big, huge financial corporations can do just about anything they want, regardless of its effects on their own nature, and they'll be continued because governments will step in and continue them, because governments are worried about the collapse of the financial system and have to deal with that. So it's very complicated in a way. But what are we looking at when we look at a big mega corporation that's now emancipated itself from the rule of nation states and seems to exist as a kind of conscienceless and lacking in empathy social form? Now we can take an old idea that's been around for a lot, and this is about form and substance. Okay, you'll find that in different places. Let's see. Let's talk about art. Okay, potter sits down and he makes a pot on a wheel. Makes a pot, and it has a form. It looks like a pot, and the substance is clay. And then he fires it, and it breaks. Now, did it break because of the form or because of the substance? Well, in most cases, it breaks because of the substance. It breaks because something is missing in the substance of the totality. And that's what we have in the situation with modern corporations, is their one-sidedness, the fact that they have absorbed only parts of human qualities to rise to the condition that they have today, where they want to emancipate themselves from any kind of rule by human beings, where they almost want to be a thing. They almost want to have their own mind. They really don't. It's this sort of culture. It's, if you saw a human being, you said, well, a human being is body, soul, and spirit. A corporation is just body and soul. There's a culture, but there's no spirit. There's no sort of overriding, controlling element that in a human being would appear as a quality of, let's say, temperance. Someone might say, well, you have to be more temperate. You have to be more cautious. You have to be disciplined. And of course, in these corporations that have done this and become independent, this quality of temperaments, this quality of restraint, this quality of selflessness that a lot of human beings has not appeared within the structure of the corporation. It's been eliminated because the corporate culture itself would not let rise to the top, to dominant positions within the corporation, individuals who displayed empathy, who displayed conscience, who displayed a belief that there ought to be substance to what they do, rather than just form and shape and making money and all of that stuff. So we have a situation in the world today where we have now this conflict, you might say, between nation states and large international corporations. Okay, I think I need to stop again. I don't want to run over and have to do what I did the last time, so I'm going to stop, come back and do